The day Elara's father called her the plain one in front of the Duke of Ashmont, something inside her chest cracked so quietly that no one else heard it break. She was 17, standing in the drawing room of their crumbling estate, watching her younger sister Rosalind, golden-haired, rose-cheeked, perfect Rosalind, curtsy with practiced grace before the most powerful man in the northern territories. Their father's hand trembled as he gestured toward Rosalind, his voice thick with desperation and whine. "Take the pretty one, your grace. She'll make you a fine wife. Forget the other." The other. That's what Elara had become in her own home. Not a daughter. Not even a name. Just the other one, the shadow. The mistake that stood too tall, smiled too little, and had the audacity to prefer books over batting her eyelashes. But what haunted Elara most in that moment wasn't her father's cruelty, and she'd grown accustomed to that like one grows accustomed to a stone in their shoe. It was the look in the Duke's eyes as they flickered from Rosalind to her. Not pity, which she could have endured. Not disgust, which she'd expected. But something else entirely. Something that looked almost like recognition. The estate had been dying for years, slowly suffocating under debts that multiplied like weeds. Elara watched it happen from the library, where she spent her days managing accounts her father refused to acknowledge, writing letters to creditors he pretended didn't exist. Rosalind, meanwhile, had been groomed for this moment since childhood. Dancing lessons, French lessons, the art of conversation that said everything while meaning nothing. Their mother had died believing Rosalind would save them all. That beauty was currency enough to buy back their lost fortune, and perhaps she was right. The Duke of Ashmont was recently widowed, immensely wealthy, and in need of a wife. When his carriage arrived that autumn morning, their father had practically shoved Rosalind into the man's path, while pulling Elara back into the shadows where she belonged. "I'll take the other one," the Duke said quietly, his words dropping into the room like stones into still water. "If she'll have me." The silence that followed was so complete that Elara could hear the clock ticking in the hall, each second stretching into eternity. Her father's face cycled through confusion, anger, and finally desperate calculation. Rosalind's perfect mouth fell open, her practiced composure cracking for the first time Elara could remember. "Your Grace," her father stammered, "surely you don't mean—" "I mean exactly what I said." The Duke's voice was firm but not unkind. He turned to face Elara fully, and she forced herself not to look away, even though everything in her wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. "Miss Elara, would you do me the honor of walking with me in the garden?" She should have said no. She should have asked why, demanded an explanation, protected herself from whatever game this powerful man was playing. Instead, she found herself nodding, following him out of that suffocating room and into the cold October air. They walked in silence for several minutes, their breath forming clouds in the morning chill. The garden was overgrown, another casualty of their declining fortune. Elara had tried to maintain it herself, but there were only so many hours in a day, and the roses her mother had loved were losing their battle against the weeds. "You tend the southeastern corner," the Duke observed, pausing by a small patch where marigolds still bloomed defiantly. "I noticed when I arrived. Everything else is wild, but there, someone cares for it. The morning sun hits there," Elara said, unsure why she was explaining. "It's where my mother planted herbs for the kitchen. I couldn't let them die completely." He nodded, bending to examine a struggling basil plant. 3 months ago, I received a letter. It was addressed to my late wife's charitable foundation. She established it to help women learn trades, become self-sufficient. The letter was from this estate, requesting not money, but information about apprenticeships for the kitchen maids and the groundskeepers. "Daughter." He straightened, fixing her with that same unreadable look from before. "It was signed with your name." Elara's throat tightened. She'd forgotten about that letter, written late one night when the hopelessness of their situation had threatened to drown her. Not for herself. She'd long accepted her fate, but for the servants who would be turned out without references when the estate finally collapsed. "I thought if they had skills," she said softly, "they might survive what's coming." "You were trying to save them?" "Even as your own house crumbled, it wasn't a question. I made inquiries after that letter. Do you know what I learned, Miss Elara? That you've been holding this estate together with little more than willpower and mathematics. That you personally negotiate with creditors, manage what remains of the household, and have been quietly selling your mother's jewelry, piece by piece to pay the servants. Wages. Wages your father gambles away as quickly as you can secure them. She felt her face flush with shame. That's not... I also learned that when your sister wanted a new gown for the governor's ball, you gave her yours and wore something 3 years out of fashion. That you taught the stable boy to read because he wanted to write letters to his mother. That you sit with the cook when her arthritis is bad and chop all the vegetables. Yourself, so she won't lose her position. He paused, his voice softening. And that despite all of this, despite being overlooked and undervalued at every turn, you have never spoken an unkind word about your family. Not once. Tears burned behind Elara's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Why are you telling me this? Because I spent 10 years in a marriage of beauty and convenience. My late wife was lovely to look at, accomplished in all the proper ways, and we were both utterly miserable. When she died, I swore my next marriage would be different. He took a step closer, and Elara could see the sincerity in his weathered face. The gray at his temples that spoke of responsibility carried long and well. I don't need ornamental. I don't need perfect. I need someone who understands that life is work. That kindness is a choice we make every day. And that real beauty exists in how we treat those who can do nothing for us. You don't even know me, Elara whispered. I know enough. I know you're the kind of woman who saves basil plants and servant girls, who holds together what others would abandon. I know you see people really see them in a way that most never learn. He held out his hand, palm up, offering rather than demanding. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking if you'll consider building something real with me. A partnership, a life where your worth is recognized, where your strength is valued, where you never again have to stand in the shadows while others diminish you. Elara looked at his hand, then back at the house where her father and sister waited, where they would welcome her back only long. Enough to punish her for this impossible choice. She thought of all the years she'd made herself smaller, quieter, less, trying to earn love from people who had none to spare. I have conditions, she heard herself say. The servants must be cared for, all of them. And my father's debts will be settled, on the condition that he never contacts you asking for money again. Your sister will receive a modest dowry when she marries, but nothing more. His hand remained steady, patient. What else? I want to continue the work. Your late wife's foundation. If she was trying to help women become independent, that work shouldn't die with her. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or relief. I had hoped you'd say that. The foundation has languished since her death. It needs someone who understands its purpose, who believes in it. It needs you. When Elara placed her hand in his, it felt less like surrender and more like the first free choice she'd ever made. The Duke smiled, truly smiled, and for the first time in years, Elara felt seen. Not as the plain one, the other one, the rejected sister, but as herself. Wholly and entirely herself. Inside the house, her father was already calculating how to extract money from this unexpected turn. Rosalind was weeping, not from heartbreak, but from wounded pride. But Elara, walking back through the overgrown garden with her hand in the Duke's, felt something bloom in her chest where that quiet crack had been. Not happiness, and not yet. That would come with time, carefully tended like the herbs in her mother's garden. What bloomed in that moment was something more precious. Hope. The radical, terrifying hope that perhaps she'd never been the wrong daughter. Perhaps the world had simply been looking at the wrong things all along. And perhaps finally, she'd found someone who'd been looking for exactly what she had to offer, not beauty or perfection, but the stubborn, luminous courage it takes to be kind when the world insists you should be hard. As they reached the house, the Duke paused. Your father called you plain, he said quietly. But he's wrong. You're extraordinary. It just takes the right eyes to see it. And for the first time in 17 years, Elara believed it might be true.